Hello and welcome to Modkit Mayhem. So here we are, weathering stages for the Hummel. It was supposed to be in one video, but unfortunately there's so much to do that I've had to make it into two parts, so apologies for that. I get to as far as the washes with this video, and then the chipping will have to be in the next video and the kind of detail areas. I'd had to make the tracks actually attached because making them so that they could actually pull away and be able to paint them separately was near now impossible, because they would have just broken to pieces because the tracks are so fine and didn't really attach that well to each other. So I think I'd have made more work for myself in the long run. So it made sense to have them attached and paint them sort of in situ. The only trouble with this is there's a lot of detail area to get to that's tricky because the kind of the hull sort of is in your way, so it takes a little bit longer and you have to be a little bit more precise, but it can be done. It's fine, you know, it's the only way of doing it, so you just have to crack on. I purchased the Vallejo track and wheel set. You could have probably used a normal brown and painted them with that, and then some silver, the metal areas, but I was quite sort of pleased with the dark rust. It actually, once you'd kind of thinned it ever so slightly, it looked quite good. And putting on the metal, or the gun metal that comes in the pack actually with it, that actually looked quite nice as well. And then on top of that, then you create a rust wash. I think that tones down the gun metal. I didn't bother painting the actual very bottom surface of the track because that's what will sit on the ground. Once I'd done that, I painted the wheels, or the rubber tyres. You have to be a bit careful that you don't paint the actual rims. I did that a couple of times and had to sort of paint over with some dark yellow after, but again I thinned it ever so slightly just to get it to sort of just flow a little bit better. There you go, you can see where I've actually painted a little bit on the rim, but like I said, you just cover that up in some yellow. So here it is, here's the gun metal and the rust. Just highlighted the areas that would come in contact with the hard ground, or the kind of asphalt or cobblestones. There's no point kind of doing in the recesses. To be honest, most of that's going to be covered in mud anyway, so you'll probably hardly see in this. There'll be just a glint of metal after I'm finished. After I'd done the tracks, I put a little bit of silver on the sprocket teeth because they rub actually as they drive the track around. So first of all, I just highlighted the edge with a little bit of black so that the silver had something to kind of grip to, and you can just leave a little bit of black. It just kind of gives a little bit of a kind of contrast. After the tracks were done, I moved on to the tarpaulin, which was covering the driver's hatch. I decided early on that I wanted to sort of do it in camouflage rather than just be a kind of boring grey tarp, just a bit of interest really. And again, you know, I'd used a piece of foil crinkled up, and I was sort of unsure whether that was actually going to last. So far so good, fingers crossed. I painted it with Middlestone, which is from the Flames of War set, and that seemed to be a marked sort of contrast in terms of being a little bit more darker than the actual yellow of the vehicle. And then I used chocolate brown for the brown actual areas of camouflage with a reflective green, if I remember rightly. The camouflage here is from a canvas that I'd seen that they use on tents, on the German tents. I kind of just emulated that, and it really is, it's just hard edged. There's no roundness to any of the camouflage parts. Just work your way through that and keep it sort of fairly sort of similar sizes, and then the reflective green goes in between it, but it's a lot less green on these. It's mostly brown. You could probably paint the flecks. There's a sort of darker fleck that goes over it, but I don't think it really needs it. At this kind of scale it'd look a bit odd, it might be over the top, so I just kept it sort of fairly simple. You know, the three colours, the Middlestone, and then the chocolate brown, and then the reflective green, and that's all it needs. After that I can cover it in a varnish, and hopefully that'll keep everything safe and secure and not chip away, because that's only been my main worry with this sort of foil, that if you hit it wrong it could chip and just leave a large chunk of silver. Like I say, I'd planned to do this all in one video, but I think it would have been about 40-50 minutes long, and it's just too long. So now I'll make it a part 2 next week, and can go on to the Frankenstein Panther after that and finish that. Hopefully with this one I can just get up to a point where we'll get the washes on the actual vehicle. There's still a lot to pack in, but like I said, there's no way of doing it in one video, so apologies for that. The top area of the crew compartment is going to be covered in mud, so you can see it's quite a rough finish on it. I wasn't really bothered. I got a little bit of super glue on it. And because I knew that the crew walk all around there and that I'd be covering it in a sort of dried up mud from their boot prints, I wasn't too worried about keeping it all that clean. In fact, if anything, it adds texture to it, so I'm pretty sure that'll look quite nice once I get the actual mud down on it. Here you can see the greens going on, reflective green. Actually, I'll post a link below. I found a kind of image on the internet that had a good reference, so you can kind of just compare that you're getting the right ratio of green to brown. Had another tarp in the back where a shell was sitting on top of it. Kind of the crew had put it down so it didn't roll around too much, you know, ready for action as it were. That's the only other tarp I was going to do in the camo. It just kind of balances the front and the back. It's not too heavy weighted in terms of the texture at the front, so I was hoping this would sort of balance that out. Not entirely sure what colour I should be painting the shell. I'll have to have a look at some reference for that, because is it a dark grey, or is actually any colour on there? After I'd done that, I got the old clear out. I've not used this in years. And it's probably a really old school technique now, but it's the only one I know that will sort of protect it in the weathering stages. You probably can buy a product, but yeah, so I just sprayed the entire model in clear. Generally, you can just get a good coat on there and it kind of does it itself. After that, I knew I had to do a filter on it because it was a lot of same coloured kind of German yellow, so I'd got some old oils, but I wasn't sure. Well, it's been a long time since I used oils. I wasn't sure how they're going to look on the actual yellow, so I took some of that and I took some MIG wash, thinned that down and created a kind of filter with that, and just had a look to see which was the best one. That seemed to work okay. It looked the best, so I used the wash thinned down in the end. The oils were just a bit too grubby, probably 17 years old, those actual oil paint. The wash was nice and well, it just had a nicer feel to it, so I used that instead. I painted that on first, and then using the brush I created upwards or vertical stripes like rain, as you can see here. You'll see it shortly. Rain washed down from it, so it kind of gives it a bit of a texture in terms of it's ever so you know, light, just very subtle. It does look better than just it being dabbed on and left to pool wherever it likes. I'd forgotten how smelly enamels were. The house absolutely reeked. I had to open the windows, which is not the best thing to do in the middle of winter. In future, I'm going to try and find a way of doing this with acrylic, because although they look good and you know, it was quite nice using them again, the smell is just really bad, and I don't think they're very good for you either. It's a lot of faff for something that really you probably could do with an acrylic. So after this, I think on the next one, probably on the Panther, I'll just try and do a, you know, water-based kind of painting. Right, onto the gun barrel again. Just made sure that I was vertical, so that if you imagine where the rain would fall during, you know, the winter period, any grime would just wash down in vertical stripes down off of the barrel or anywhere on the kind of vehicle. So it was just basically up in vertical brush strokes. I moved on to the decals then, and these are really old, so I wasn't sure how they were going to form, or whether they were going to just crack up. They sort of furled up, which I managed to sort of just resolve with a bit of jiggery pokering. They worked fine. The only thing is just tricky with these is finding the centre of that actual large panel. Next time I think I'll measure it and make sure it is centred. After that I put on some Vallejo decal fixer just to nail it down, as it were, and then after that covered that with a clear coat as well, just to stop any silvering and protect it from more of a wash. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe below. It helps out massively, and hopefully the channel will sort of increase with subscribers and get more people watching. It's been good fun so far. I've really enjoyed doing this. Till next week, thanks very much for watching. Cheers.